The K Jazz Show, Sundays on Kofifi FM 97.2.
That's right. You are listening to the K-Jazz Show on Kofifi FM 97.2, where we bring you the voices and sounds shaping jazz today. And speaking of, we have a truly special guest joining us for today's edition of Our Africa. He is an ethnomusicologist, multi-instrumentalist, composer, a band leader whose work embodies the deep and ever-evolving legacy of Black creative music. Kofifi FM, talking to us from Chicago today. Please welcome Adam Zanolini.
Hi. Hey. So great to talk to you. So great to see you. So great to see and hear you and talk to you and to have an opportunity and a platform to talk to your listeners.
You are so welcome. And of course, it's been a while since you and I got together. And Adam, I wanted to talk about your musical journey. That has taken you through many spheres: academia, performance, community organizing, just to name a few. Let's talk a little bit about, how you see your role over the years in today's jazz landscape.
Yeah, it's been an amazing and whirlwind journey. I certainly never thought I would end up here when I started. I was really trying to help other musicians play more than play myself, but people kept inviting me to perform, very notably Angel Bataweed. But a lot of other amazing musicians and artists. I think really one of the most important starting points of my musical journey started with the AACM. I loved jazz from when I was young, and loved Miles Davis and John Coltrane and people from the 1950s and 60s. But when I moved to Chicago when I was about 18 years old, I encountered the AACM. The Association for the Advancement of Creative Musicians here in Chicago, who were a very, very great presence at a place called the Velvet Lounge, which was run by Fred Anderson, the great Baba Fred, who, opened that space for people and gave so many musicians their start and opportunities to present their work and to develop their craft at that amazing hallowed place. And I was completely just blown away by what I saw, people kind of using music to express, not only, to entertain people, but to also conduct very serious investigations into history and culture, the connections among the different nodes of the African diaspora, from Africa to the Caribbean to South America to Europe, and seriously investigating what that means for us as a people that are struggling against all kinds of ramifications from slavery and colonialism in the present, and finding really strong ways to do that sonically and discursively. And I had never heard anything like that, and I was completely, blown away.
Yeah.
And so I decided to study. That's worthy of study. So I was really I was kind of a student and a scholar at the time, and I was inspired to go to school because I didn't know about it. Yeah. A lot of what they were talking about. And so I ended up studying music at the City University of New York. I moved to New York City, where a lot of AACM members had gone, managed to learn an awful lot about music and Black history and culture at CUNY. And I also really was extremely fortunate to come into the orbit and the organization of Patricia and William Parker at Arts for Art, the Vision Festival in New York City, where I worked as the associate director for a number of years, helping to run that festival before coming back to Chicago to finish writing my doctoral dissertation on Afrocentric spiritual jazz in Chicago, meeting a lot more members of the AACM, some of the newer cats that kind of had come into the organization while I was away in New York. And around that time, I started to, first of all, study with Brother Phil Coran, who's been probably the greatest influence, on my musical journey, really brought me to the source of an awful lot of that spirit that I witnessed at the Velvet Lounge and throughout the AACM. I started to play a lot of music with Angel Bataweed, sort of under mentorship, and at least in the space created by David Boykin and his Sonic Healing Ministries. Angel and I started a collective called the Participatory Music Coalition, and we started to just gather all kinds of creative energy, not only from musicians, but from artists and poets and thespians and a whole pile of different creative people that you might not even be able to categorize, and it was just this whirlwind of creative energy. And then somehow I ended up as the executive director of Elastic Arts in 2017, which opened me up in a whole other way to so many other creative forms and forces that are flowing through Chicago. I joined the AACM in 2018, shortly thereafter, and just been playing music with a lot of different people in Chicago. Have gotten a chance to travel playing music, which is amazing. A couple years ago, I decided to get some of my compositions together that were greatly inspired by Brother Phil Coran. And ask some of my closest friends to come and perform some of my compositions with me, and they were very gracious to really dig into my compositions and learn them and take them to places that I've never seen before. And so that project is called the Heliacal Rising of Sothis, which I had the incredible great fortune to be able to bring to South Africa last year, which was really one of the highlights of my career. And I got to meet Nawako, and I got to meet a lot of amazing jazz figures in that amazing country where jazz is so alive and vibrant and meaningful and deep. That's I guess the grand arc of my musical journey up until the present.
An incredible journey, one that is certainly deserving of a novel, in case you were thinking about it. But I want us to talk about...
Wait, could you say that just one more time for the...
In case you were thinking about it, worthy of a novel. I want us to talk about, the celebration that you're involved in, in honoring the legacy of Johnny Mbizo Dyani, which is one of the reasons why you're spending time with us, this Sunday, and his concept of skenge. What is that?
I have to investigate skenge a lot more. I know that Johnny Dyani's music has been really inspirational for people around the world, from Europe to New York, certainly in Chicago. I, didn't know just how deep that legacy went until I went to South Africa, and just heard just the love and respect and the joy that his music brought to everybody. It was really, really inspirational. So when Brother Tony came to us and said, we want to celebrate Johnny Dyani and really, spread his word and spread his spirit to the people in Chicago, and, I was so excited, and to collaborate with the AACM, which I think, is very, very much consonant and resonant with that spirit. We were just like beside ourselves. So Ben Lamar Gay and I are working with some of the most incredible musicians that we know in this project, and undertaking to kind of combine Johnny Dyani's music and spirit with the AACM spirit, and sort of make it live in the present in Chicago. Working with the great Nicole Mitchell is coming to town. That's wonderful. We miss Nicole in Chicago, but she comes in and comes back often enough that it's not so bad. But we're so excited that she's coming. Jovia Armstrong is coming to town to bless us with her rhythm and her vision. We have a bunch of really heavy cats here, including Ernest Dawkins, who performs in South Africa an awful lot. I think he might be there right now. He's the person really who introduced so many of us here in Chicago to South African jazz and helped us understand that there's like a really, really thriving scene that we knew very little about happening in South Africa. And he brought a lot of the musicians to Chicago. We were like, wow, really created a strong link and a strong bridge between Chicago and South Africa. So really excited that he can be involved in it. So a lot of cats, and including the people that came with us to South Africa. So we're eagerly digging into the really vast and broad, recording and compositional, legacy that Mbizo left for us. And we are just, it's really inspiring a lot of people to dig deeper into that history, but to also expand ourselves creatively and compositionally. It's just going to be a really fun thing. And excited that it's going to be broadcast and streamed and available for everybody to be able to participate in.
Kofifi FM. We're spending time with Adam Zanolini this Sunday. Of course, multi-instrumentalist, composer, ethnomusicologist, writer, and arts organizer based in Chicago, because I know he can write. If he can speak that well, I know he can write, and we will be getting that book. And Adam, you are deeply connected to Chicago's jazz and experimental music scene, which has a rich legacy, of this kind of boundary-pushing work, we call it that. Let's talk about how that city, that you call home, has helped shape your approach to this.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I think it has almost everything to do with that, with my approach to this work. It's such a fertile ground for pushing boundaries, for expanding what even music can be, not only jazz. People think more broadly about all of these categories that seem so salient when we're trying to sell products. Sort of break down a little bit when you move beyond that and look more into the interrelation among poetry and jazz music and classical music and soul music and R&B music, and visual art, and all of these different forms are not so disconnected here in Chicago, and I think really the interconnection among all of them is really, really celebrated. I think the AACM has an awful lot to do with that spirit really residing here in Chicago, and that spirit of collectivity, where those people, for those people who don't know what the AACM is, we are a 60-year-old musicians collective that was founded in 1965 by Brother Phil Coran, Muhal Richard Abrams, Steve McCall, and Jody Christian, as a response to kind of the closure of a lot of jazz clubs on the south side of Chicago, and also kind of this a response to the way that the music had been kind of contained within the entertainment and recording industries in ways that limited musicians and artists' ability to kind of explore new directions and dimensions of music. And so that collective enabled people to explore composition, original composition, in ways that weren't being done. It allowed people to engage with compositional concepts, not only within the jazz tradition, but across great Black music, which is the term that the art ensemble coined, and which was adopted by the organization as a whole. Yeah. Describing music that isn't bounded by the idea of jazz, and really people don't even really embrace the word jazz as much as creative music, as great Black music, because the boundary between what you would call jazz and soul music or funk music or gospel music doesn't really matter that much. It just sort of matters what time of day you're playing, but the spirit is sort of the same, right? Yeah. And those kind of areas they're all things that musicians are all exploring all at the same time. And sometimes it's helpful to kind of lead people to the jazz section of the record store, but as a creative artist, you kind of want to blow through all of those boundaries and barriers and explore all of that domain and create something new out of it that doesn't even really have a name, right? Yeah. And so I think that spirit of collectivity and creating the conditions that allowed that to happen in Chicago was really formative for not only for the members of the AACM, but for all of the musicians in Chicago. You mentioned the Jazz Institute of Chicago. The AACM predates the Jazz Institute of Chicago, which is a storied, a very, very functional and foundational organization, institution in Chicago. But the AACM preceded that, and the idea of setting up organizations that were sort of outside of the entertainment and recording industry for the support of serious music coming out of the Black communities, where that support was sort of eroding, not only enabled us to support each other, but also enabled people to go in directions that they could never have gone before.
I want to bring in, this influence that we speak on. And I know Johnny's work, of course, has had a profound influence on the perspective of this, creative Black music that we speak of. How do you think that this work in particular has broadened the conversation, maybe, around jazz and improv in the US?
I think it's really it's broadened our conversation because the U.S. I will say I love us, but we are a little bit obsessed with ourselves, and in jazz,
Yeah.
and we sort of I mean, there's a lot of great music that's happened here and stuff, but I think that we don't fully understand how much amazing jazz is happening in places all over the world. It's people come to the United States to kind of deal with our scene, but there's really, really thriving scenes that are happening in other places. And South Africa is one of the places where that music is really, really just so hot and thriving. I certainly don't have to tell you that.
Yeah.
But we're just like amazed that it's like that hot and happening there, but also that it has so much meaning, and that its relationship with the struggle for freedom is so like recent and fresh and vibrant and sort of active in ways that I think in the United States that meaning and that valence of jazz has receded a little bit. I love that. I was like, it was so. I mean, that presence is so inspirational. Just like the strength of like melody that Johnny Dyani comes with. It's just so powerful. It's like a diamond. I know you all talk about diamonds in South Africa. It's like this. You don't need a lot of trappings when you got something that strong, and then it helps everybody else to create. And so it really empowers all of the musicians to work from that core, and that kind of model, that approach to composition. It's fantastic. I think that has inspired a lot of people to, think more broadly about composition and empowering the individual musicians who are playing and sort of awaken their spontaneous compositions from within themselves as they're engaging with Dyani's composition, and then having freedom to sort of diverge, and tap into the moment, tap into the energy that's coming in or coming up, tap into all of that in the moment. And you can go back then later once we get through dealing with what's really present and what's really happening, right? So I mean, that spirit has been really inspirational. I know it flowed through New York. I know we've heard it radiating and kind of in currency among so many of the musicians that have come from South Africa to bless us, even later. Everybody, this is sort of like my experience of like realizing that Brother Phil was like the source of so much energy that I had encountered, like, decades later. Kind of really engaging with Johnny Dyani is sort of like helping me understand the musicians that, I've gotten to know from South Africa.
I want us to also, as we head to the wrap of our conversation, I want us to also talk about, this upcoming gathering for Johnny and its inspiration. Maybe somebody's sitting there thinking, I love what these two were saying, but what really inspired and maybe what was so important, to highlight this work on such a grand scale? We mentioned earlier that we'll be streaming it across several countries. Let's reflect on this.
I understand that, there is a project from the Chicago Humanities Festival and a collaboration between the Chicago Humanities Festival and the Art Institute of Chicago that wants to celebrate work of Africa and the African diaspora, really engaging with the idea of diaspora and dispersal from Africa, and then the important interconnections among all of the places that African people have landed and established, societies and civilizations all over around the Atlantic, from Europe to North America, South America, the Caribbean. That story is really, really powerful, but we've told it in sort of primarily from this way that established African American people in the United States. And I think it's really exciting to think about other roots and routes of culture that didn't come from West Africa to the United States, but culture that came from South Africa and then went through Europe and then came to America in this way, kind of in a more kind of contemporary way, right? And especially this continuing dialogue. I think a lot of people think about African diaspora as this sort of moment of dispersal, traumatic dispersal from West Africa to the United States, and then this break. But there's been this continual conversation going on among Africans in Africa, in the Americas, in Europe, and Johnny Dyani's music is part of that conversation, and like a key factor in the development of a music that not only honors the source of jazz and the origins of jazz in New Orleans and its trajectory to Chicago and New York and all across the country, but its continual dialogue in terms of the struggle for freedom and liberation into the 90s and beyond, And that, I think, is really compelling to people and really important to engage with in a way that not only is intellectually interesting, but also really grabs your spirit and helps you tap into that kind of fundamental creativity in everybody that, Johnny Dyani's music really, it's undeniable, and it penetrates all kinds of differences among people. So I think that's really that's really the idea. It's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Following the roots and the routes of jazz, from its inception to all over the world, and almost like a full circle moment where it comes back. and you get to reflect on this journey and how many lives it's touched along the way. An incredible tribute, to the legacy of Johnny Dyani, and a wonderful concept that you guys are working on. Now, the only thing that remains, and which is the most important part of this conversation, how can we be a part of it? Please share dates and where we in South Africa can tune in.
It's happening on the 8th of March. I know it's happening at 8 o'clock in the United States, in Chicago time. I don't know what time that is in South Africa. But hopefully you can do some math and the computer will help you determine what time that is. I'm pretty sure the way to stream it is through the Pan-African Space Station, through Chimurenga. The organization Chimurenga. Brother Ntone Jabe is one of the people who are organizing it, and he has that link on the poster. So I think that's the right way. Usually you can also stream it. The event is taking place at Constellation, which is a venue in Chicago, and they often also stream things too. I'm not 100% sure that it'll be streamed there, but if you want to find out how to stream it, go to Chimurenga's website.
Yes.
And it will have information of how you can access it. I think it's through Pan-African Space Station.
And of course, if you were wondering, Chimurenga is also available on Facebook. So do visit the Facebook page and those details will be up there. Now, Adam, it's been a fantastic conversation. But before you go, thank you so much for sharing your insights. Thank you so much, for your passion for this music. And of course, the last time you and I got together was after a wonderful performance of the Helical Rising of the Soothers project, right? And I then dropped a bomb and I said to you, so when's the album coming around? So I'm here to collect. Where's the update?
We just got this in the mail.
Oh,
so
hey,
we've got it.
Hey, my copy
came like
arrived
last week. You said get it, and I did it for you. So
there we go.
Here we go.
My copy.
I still haven't gotten it to distribute it and stuff like that. I got it in my pocket and in my trunk, but I'm gonna work on the distribution part and being able to make it available to people. Right now, it's just kind of hand-to-hand combat.
All right. We'll wait our turn. We'll certainly wait our turn. And of course, I can't wait to share with everyone incredible music that came out of that night, at that festival. Really, really fantastic stuff. But of course, we look forward to hearing all about you and your journey. And of course, seeing you at the Johnny Dyani gathering in a few weeks.
Thank you so very much. It was so wonderful to see you and talk to you again.
As always,
thanks for everyone who's listening. And please come and tune in and let's celebrate this amazing legacy together.
Absolutely. He is ethnomusicologist, multi-instrumentalist. He's a composer, a band leader. His name is Adam Zanolini, and he was on the K-Jazz Show.